The Passion of our Lord Jesus Christ. The assembly of the elders of the people rose as a body and brought Jesus before Pilate. They began to accuse him, saying, "We found this man perverting our nation, forbidding us to pay taxes to the emperor, and saying that he himself is the Messiah, a king." Then Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He answered, "You say so." Then Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowds, "I find no basis for an accusation against this man." But they were insistent and said, "He stirs up the people by teaching throughout all Judea, from Galilee where he began even to this place." When Pilate heard this, he asked whether the man was a Galilean. And when he heard that he was under Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him off to Herod, who was himself in Jerusalem at that time. When Herod saw Jesus, he was very glad, for he had wanted to see him for a long time, because he had heard about him and was hoping to see him perform some sign.
To the Honorable Pontius Pilate, Procurator of Judea, from the Honorable Herod Antipas, Tetrarch of Galilee. I greet you in the name of the divine Tiberius. I have received your package, the magician of Galilee. I know, Pontius, that we have had our differences in the past, but you have shown such deference to me in sending Jesus of Nazareth to me for judgment that I cannot be other than pleased. Your sending him to me shows that you honor my power and position as Tetrarch of Galilee. Now, to the matter at hand. I was quite interested in speaking with Jesus. I have long thought how I would like to speak with him and perhaps have him demonstrate a trick or two. You know how I love entertainment and amusing diversions. You, in fact, attended my birthday celebration, where Salome danced the dance of the 7 veils. It was a bit unfortunate that the beheading of John followed closely on the heels of the dance, and it did bring down the mood of the celebration a bit, but a promise is a promise. But I digress. My meeting with Jesus was a bit of a disappointment, I'm afraid. I had hoped to see such wonders from him that I had crafted a plan. If he had shown any of his abilities, it was my thought that he should be sent to Tiberius as a gift from you and me to serve as entertainment at court. What an honor that would have been for him. Such a gift to the emperor would have cemented our reputations with Caesar. Alas, from what I saw, this Jesus is not up to the task. He said absolutely nothing, answered no questions, and certainly did not add to the conversation. I'm sure he was just paralyzed by being in my magnificent presence. Imagine how dumbstruck he would be in the presence of Tiberius Caesar. No, that would never do. So in response to his silence, I dressed him in a magnificent robe and have sent him back to you. Truly, I don't think the man is very bright. As such a one dim of wit, I do not perceive in him any danger to the rule of law, and certainly not to the might of Rome. Do with him what you will. With my best regards for you and the emperor, I remain your devoted colleague, Antipas, Tetrarch of Galilee.
He questioned him at some length, but Jesus gave him no answer. The chief priests and the scribes stood by, vehemently accusing him. Even Herod, with his soldiers, treated him with contempt and mocked him. Then he put an elegant robe on him and sent him back to Pilate. That same day, Herod and Pilate became friends with each other. Before this, they had been enemies. Pilate called together the chief priests, the leaders, and the people, and said to them, "You brought me this man as one who was perverting the people. And here I have examined him in your presence, and have not found this man guilty of any of your charges against him. Neither is Herod, for he sent him back to us. Indeed, he has done nothing to deserve death. I will therefore have him flogged and release him." Then they all shouted out together, "Away with this fellow! Release Barabbas for us." This was a man who had been put in prison for an insurrection that had taken place in the city and for murder. Pilate, wanting to release Jesus, addressed them again, but they kept shouting, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" A third time he said to them, "Why? What evil has he done? I have found in him no ground for the sentence of death. I will therefore have him flogged and then release him." But they kept urgently demanding with loud shouts that he should be crucified, and their voices prevailed. So Pilate gave his verdict that their demand should be granted. He released the man they asked for, the one who had been put in prison for insurrection and murder, and he handed Jesus over as they wished. As they led him away, they seized a man, Simon of Cyrene, who was coming in from the country, and they laid the cross on him and made him carry it behind Jesus.
I lay in a pile of wood in a storeroom. There are other beings just like myself. There is an old legend that you may have heard, that the wood of the cross, my wood, was from the dogwood tree. The legend goes that the dogwood was once as large as an oak, strong and mighty. But the dogwood was so ashamed of its role as Christ's cross that it begged to be cursed so as never to grow tall and strong again. But this is mere legend. Though I have only a dim memory of the tree from which I came, I do have a sense that it was a cypress, strong and fragrant. This night I lay in a pile of crossbeams. We lay in wait for the morning when we would play host to 3 men to be crucified. I was to be adorned with the body of Jesus. I am the crossbeam, known as the patibulum. I have 2 fellow pieces that work with me to fashion the means of execution. The second part of me is the stipes, or stake. It sits permanently in the ground, awaiting its next use. Those to be crucified carry only me, the patibulum. The stipes remains permanently in place. With such a landscape as Jerusalem, all rock and sand, it's enormously difficult to dig post holes, so once set, the stakes remain, waiting in silent vigil for their next victim. There was also a small shelf-like piece where the feet were nailed, which may have been of pine. I don't really recall. It's been a long time. I hate my job. To be an instrument of torture and death, when used, I have felt the agony of the victim. As the nails pierce flesh and bone, tearing nerves apart, my flesh was pierced as well. I have hosted any number of victims, but the one tomorrow is the worst yet. It will be a carpenter, one who has worked with my kind and built tables, chairs, bed frames, all instruments of comfort. And now he is to be nailed to his craft as an instrument of torture and death. I feel very much of the mind of the dogwood of legend, ashamed of my role. Perhaps it would have been better had I been used for firewood long ago, burned, turned to ash, dead.
A great number of people followed him, and among them were women who were beating their breasts and wailing for him. But Jesus turned to them and said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and your children. For the days are surely coming when they will say, 'Blessed are the barren and the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed.' Then they will begin to say to the mountains, 'Fall on us,' and to the hills, 'Cover us.' For if they do this when the wood is green, what will happen when it is dry?" 2 others also, who were criminals, were led away to be put to death with him. When they came to the place that is called the Skull, they crucified Jesus there with the criminals, one on his right and one on his left. Then Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." And they cast lots to divide his clothing. And the people stood by, watching. But the leaders scoffed at him, saying, "He saved others. Let him save himself if he is the Messiah of God, his chosen one." The soldiers also mocked him, coming up and offering him sour wines, and saying, "If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself." There is also an inscription over him, "This is the King of the Jews."
I made the decision to follow him. At first, I thought it was the intensity of his eyes as he stopped along his road toward death and looked upon me and the others in the crowd through the blood that was coursing over his face. And then I thought it was his compassion for us as we were beating our breasts and wailing for him who was so injured, carrying the heavy crossbeam that was the instrument of his execution. But then he spoke, and his words stung my heart to the core. I am a young woman, just married. My husband and I are looking forward to having a family. Children would be my life's greatest blessing. So how could he say, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and your children"? How dare he even suggest that it would be a blessing for my womb to be barren and my breasts never having the joy of nursing my sons and daughters? At that moment, I disdained him, and it was my rage that drove me on. I wanted to follow him to see him suffer for the terrible things he had said to me. I told my friends, "I am angry," and they tried to stop me. "Hannah, Hannah, where are you going?" But I ignored them and followed the growing crowd to the place of the skull. And it was there. The scales fell from my eyes, and I realized how wrong I was. I stood by watching as they nailed him to the cross, heard his cries of anguish, and witnessed our religious leaders cruelly mocking him. It was then I felt shame and covered my face with my hands, especially when he asked his Father to forgive them. Forgive me, because none of us knew what we were doing. As I understood, his words were not about me or the other women. He was directing his words, his actions, his everything to all of sinful humankind, to reveal to us the love and justice of God embodied in him that was now being displayed on the cross. I shouted out, attempting to rise above the loud screaming and yelling, oh yes, we should weep for ourselves. We are ignorant of who he really is and what he is accomplishing for us, for our salvation." No one listened or even turned in my direction. The tears began freely flowing from my eyes. I glanced over and saw the women crying at the foot of the cross, one of them holding his bloody feet and kissing them. And I heard someone whisper, "That's his mother. That's his mother." I collapsed on my knees, wailed loudly, beat my breast for her who was grieving the loss, the death of her child. the son she had borne in her womb, the son she had nursed at her breasts.
One of the criminals who was hanged there kept deriding him, saying, "Are you not the Messiah? Save yourself and us." But the other rebuked him, saying, "Do you not fear God, since you are under the same sentence of condemnation? And we indeed have been condemned justly, for we are getting what we deserve for our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." He replied, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." It was now about noon, and darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m, while the sun's light failed, and the curtain of the temple was torn in two. Then Jesus, crying with a loud voice, said, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." Having said this, he breathed his last.
It always amazes me how different people respond to me. Many are afraid of me, maybe rightfully so. Bad things can happen in the dark. Thieves often steal under the cover of night. People often attack and murder others where there is an absence of illumination. Many are superstitious, believing that somehow my presence means looming shadows or evil or a wary foreboding. Many have a strong emotional response. In my presence, they feel unhappy, heart-heavy, and depressed. The one response I always get a kick out of, though, is when lovers sneak off into the night to steal that kiss. They certainly see me not as something bad, but as an attractive and welcome opportunity. I must admit, I've always been jealous of my sister, the light. She is the one with the wonderful reputation. People do not respond negatively to her as they do to me. Now, I'm not sure how I got such a bad rap, but I suspect it has a lot to do with the religious symbolism with which, those holy people associate us with as light and darkness. They use religion to justify themselves. Light is divine presence, knowledge, and goodness, while I, darkness, symbolize ignorance, separation from God, and sin. I hear it all the time. They read from Genesis how creation was first void, formless, and empty, over which I, the darkness, covered the surface of the deep. And then God introduces the light, saying, here she is, let there be light. And by the way, let's separate her from the darkness of her brother, blah, blah, blah. And then this poor fellow they just killed, well, he didn't think much of me either. He frequently contrasted us in his teachings. Be children of the light, for darkness is the outer realm where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth. But the truth of it is, what they did today was bad and evil. This prophet was innocent. His teachings primarily were about love, justice, healing, and peace. And so when they snuffed out his life like a burning candle, they brought the kind of darkness they fear most down upon themselves: ignorance, separation from God, and sin. The Holy One did what was good and right when this poor fellow breathed his last. God told my sister Light to take a break, and he covered the sun with his hand. And he said to me, "You know how I feel about you. You are not dark to me. Your night shines like the day. You and your sister Light are the same to me. You are my own creations." And then he said, "So cover the whole land. They deserve to dwell in darkness. For today they have murdered my beloved son. There is no light in them. And my light may never shine again in this perverted generation."
When the centurion had saw what had taken place, he praised God and said, "Certainly this man was innocent." And when all the crowds who had gathered there for this spectacle saw what had taken place, they returned home, beating their breasts. But all his acquaintances, including the women who had followed him from Galilee, stood at a distance watching these things. The Passion of our Lord, Jesus Christ.